So hi everybody, here we are again for another Conversation Aviation, our first one of 2022. And we're going to start now talking about this runway to recovery. Obviously with the Omicron variant, things have been perhaps a little bit depressing. So we want to try and add a bit of hope and look ahead to see what do we need to do as an industry to try and support hopefully the recovery that we're finally going to see over the next few months. So I'm joined again by Chris and Claudio. Hi guys, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having us back.
Hey John. Yeah, good, thank you.
It's nice that we can finally get together and have a chat about kind of some of the hot topics. And we're going to talk this time about this challenge of how do we welcome our passengers back to the industry. Certainly from the EASA side, at the start of COVID we had this aviation health safety protocol that set out kind of wearing of medical masks and social distancing and all these different things, and obviously we've gone through this pandemic. And I guess that's the challenge, isn't it? At a practical level, how do we make our passengers feel welcome? And funnily enough, as always, the chats we have before this, Chris, you kind of came up with a really useful, kind of interesting start to this, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think what we were saying was ultimately we're being humans and having the human nature that we have, ultimately what we want to try and do is maximise confidence and look at the traveller sentiment and see what drives that. There's lots of advice out there, governmentally in different countries and different nationalities and the way that the pandemic is being controlled or is still increasing in some countries or not. But really, all the things we have in place from the protocol, for example, and how they're assured, how they're put in place in real terms, and what you see in the airport as a passenger, will give you the confidence to travel. And that's both economically, you don't want to have cancelled flights and lose money. When you're in the airport, you want to see that what is being posted for what you should do and how you should behave is being kind of policed for everyone. You don't want people walking past doing things that you can see they should be doing, they're not, when that's not being controlled, and therefore you don't feel safe, and therefore you'd be a lot less likely to book again, and therefore the whole traveller sentiment thing starts to unravel. So I think it's, for the industry, as economically, but also personal safety, what's in the protocol is vitally important to getting.
Yeah, you've got a big trip actually coming up, haven't you, Claudio? And it must be interesting, kind of looking ahead to that and thinking what are you going to expect, etc., etc.
Well, yeah, I've been quite fortunate that we've been actually able to travel somewhat decent amount over the last year because of going visiting various families, and every time there's always been the same confusion. It changes what happens every time. Sometimes you need this document, sometimes you need that document, sometimes you need the quarantine, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
And for somebody who loves travelling, it's actually become a nuisance now. And we've got a big trip coming up, like you said, in 2 weeks' time. I'll go visit my wife's family, and the rules have changed yet again. And we now have to download certain apps, and we have to do the X, Y, and Z. But one thing we've noticed over the last 6 months is that every airport we've been to, it's never actually been checked. There's been no continuity. And we actually got to that point of, do we actually have to do it? We're just doing it to waste time. And it brings down your morale to a certain degree. And if this is me, somebody who's in the aviation industry, thinking this, I can't imagine what the average passenger who's not in the industry must be thinking of it. And not to shift the blame or to actually blame anybody, but I think one of the main problems is that airports, airport management, operations and airport staff aren't maybe understanding that what they're doing is actually greatly impacting future travel. How they're not actually reacting to it.
Yeah, I think we were discussing that I went to one of my earliest music concerts in 2022, and in the UK right now you have to show an electronic COVID certificate, and basically if you turned up to that gig and the people on the door could see from 20 metres away you had your phone ready, they were just waving you through, and that obviously, that behaviour and that assurance of safety just extends into aviation, into the airport situation, because it's the same thing, right? As a human being, you want to have confidence that the systems are in place and working for that traveller sentiment. Yeah, as you said, there's been so much effort put into guidance and advice, and the protocol, and for it to just get diffused at the execution end is a real shame, because obviously it's a big part of the economic recovery of aviation and how we get back to some sort of normalcy with passenger volumes and that confidence thing. So yeah, it's culturally it's no different to implementing any other management system, and the leadership that you just described there, or the behaviour from leadership there, even though the specific airline may not be able to control that because it is outside of there. And I think that's probably the difficulty in an airport situation. It's more difficult to have a harmonised behaviour from all the different agencies within an airport, rather than inside the four walls of an airline where, if you're talking about safety management and culture in an airline, you've got more control over that. So the difficulty, I think, is you've got external parties, you've got multiple third parties, you've got people dropping off passengers to airports who probably don't care as much because they're going to be leaving again shortly. So it's quite a tricky thing to
add
manage
into
overall.
that the political situations in many countries where people aren't necessarily confident in their leadership from a political point of view as well, and messages changing all the time. People are demoralised, and it's a difficult one, because what we have to keep telling ourselves and keep telling our colleagues is that we have to set the example, we have to be better, we have to actually do the right job. But then, like you said, if it doesn't work, and then if people are then demoralised and not wanting to do it, it's just an endless cycle. And it's just one of them ones where it's difficult, but actually we need to try and encourage ourselves to be better, which is never easy. And if it doesn't come from the top down either, and the leadership aren't actually putting that step forward, it's never going to work. It takes effort from everybody.
I also, like anything else, you've got the doing of what the protocols or the local procedures are for it, and then you've got the kind of, I don't want to use the word policing, but I'm going to use it. How do you police that? And the coordination around the airport, and those situations where you've got somebody who is just there to sort of step back and take a view of things that people don't notice they're doing because they're in the moment and they're breaking the rules, but they don't actually realise they're doing it, or they're just unconsciously incompetent, they don't know what they don't know. Then having that coordination role and actually explaining to at least the airport employees and travellers when they're starting their journeys, you might see this, you might see someone giving you a friendly nudge to behave in this way because it's good for your safety, it's good for your journey, anti-bottlenecks, it's good for the industry in general and getting back to normal. So I think there's something there and I'm sure, part of the protocols as well mention coordination roles and things like that. But then, as you said, Claudio, managing expectations of both passengers and airport staff in what to expect and how it's going to be policed is probably a key part of keeping things going and not going back to square
100%.
one.
And then, like you said as well, adding to that, just having some kind of expectations for the passengers, so the passengers are aware, it might not be as you expect. There might be some issues. Everybody is trying their hardest. They're not trying to mess up the system. They're not trying to demoralise you. They are trying their hardest to get things working. So just try and have some patience. It's difficult. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And I guess as well, I go to work sometimes through an airport. Well, I'm getting did that a few times now. Sometimes you go in the airport at 5:30 in the morning, and there's people drinking beer in the bars. And I know we're not talking about disruptive passenger behaviour, but the whole airport management plan, including maybe in this situation where you're going to have some difficult conversations, managing the alcohol. I know it's difficult because it's law, but yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I've seen, particularly when I've been travelling, certainly in the last few months, is it's having somebody, like you're saying, out on the ground, kind of reinforcing the measures, and then also kind of looking for those bottlenecks and looking for those situations where, for a bit of coordination between people from different kind of group, stakeholders, if you know what I mean. So I know one of the things I've seen, I had happen to me a couple of times where, I know handling agents have on-time performance requirements, but where the handling agent's trying to do its best to meet its on-time performance and taken a group of happy passengers who are sat in the lounge, kind of accepting they might have a 5-minute or whatever delay, but they're happy, to then putting them in an air bridge or in a confined space when there's no need to, because they've got to meet a performance indicator. And then I had that happen once where we all got boarded into the air bridge for quite a period of time, and you saw the passengers, a lot of them kind of getting more and more annoyed, and by the time they were on the aircraft, that was then a much bigger problem that the poor cabin crew on the aircraft had to deal with. And I think that's another one, it's that looking for the pinch points and kind of keeping an eye on what's operationally happening all the time and dealing with it.
I think you picked up a great point there, because what's happening there is you've got airport staff handing over to handling staff, handing over to airline staff, and everybody's up to keeping their KPIs and everybody's doing their job for their company. But actually, the ecosystem's so large that actually we have to work together, and that's where it becomes very, very difficult. Is actually trying to think ahead, right? How's this actually going to affect the airline? Although they're not my customer, if you're talking from the airport point of view, they're still a stakeholder, and our customers are the travellers, and everybody has to work cohesively. It's a very difficult situation, but that's one thing that has to be bear in mind. How does the whole ecosystem work to keep everybody happy?
So in the on the theory of trying to keep this a short and sweet discussion, if we were going to say maybe you each could say two things that an organisation or as a system we could do, what would they be?
I don't mind starting. One thing I would suggest is create ambassadors and have people that are more, check-in agents or handling agents, more as ambassadors to look out for where the problems maybe are, and report back and have that confidence that they can report back to the senior management who don't have the time or opportunity to actually go around and actually look at all the problems. That might be one way of actually helping encourage the employees to actually be more stand-up-ish, and also encourage that there is potential change that can be happening.
Yeah, and I guess I'd go back to the point of, and I think Claudio touched on it then, as an entity, an airport is made of many moving parts, and I guarantee they do this today, but having a coordination plan around this stuff, who's going to do what when, who's kind of the lead entity at this stage, and it's okay to reinforce the behaviours. We all expect it as staff from these different agencies. We all brief our staff. So I think having that sort of integrated approach that kind of gives a united front across all the different agencies, therefore indicates the right culture around it all, and therefore encourages everyone to do everything right as much as possible, would gives the passengers that end-to-end experience. And of course, we're talking about not just the departure airport, but the arrival airport as well. There's no point in getting all this right at the front and then getting off at an airport where it's all gone to pot. So I think that coordination pull-through must be in the network. If you're an airline, assuring that it's at both ends of that scale as well. So that's that planning and coordination. And I think
that's the thing, isn't it? Really, just as a final word, just to sum up, then is if we can help, kind of look at it through the passenger's lens, and with the ultimate goal that, like we would when we're on flights, is so that people, when they fly, they think, yes, I would fly again soon without any concern, and I'll happily tell my friends about all of the great experiences I had, and that they should fly too, so that this all hopefully improves, and hopefully this is the summer that we all hoped was coming in 2020 and 2021, and finally this is the summer that things really take off. Cool, I think we covered that quickly. Hopefully everybody found it interesting, and nice to talk, and we'll see you again next week, guys.
Cheers everybody. Bye.
Cheers everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.